Welcome to Online Math. In this lesson, we will look at subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. To add or subtract fractions, we first need to convert them to the fractions with the lowest common denominator. So let's first take a look at what it means by common denominator. So you see this fraction over here, we have 7 over 9 minus 5 over 9. As we can see, the bottom part of the fraction is called the denominator, and they're both 9. In this case, these fractions have the common denominator, and when they do, we're good to subtract. So for this one, the answer would be, you would keep the bottom as it is, so you keep it as a 9, and you just need to calculate the numerator bit, which is the top. So here we have 7 minus 5, and so it equals to 2 over 9. With this fraction in the bottom, we have 7 over 10 minus 2 over 5. They don't have a common denominator, so we will first need to convert them with the lowest common denominator. Now, the way to do that is to find the lowest common multiple of the denominator. So we have to look for LCM. So going back to our fractions problem here, where we have 7 over 10 minus 2 over 5, we first need to convert the bottom denominator so that they appear the same. Now, how to do that? So we have the 10 and we have the 5. Notice we said we have to get the common multiple, so we will begin by listing the multiples of 10. And it goes 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and so on. With the 5s, it goes 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and so on. So the common multiples between 10 and 5 are 10, another one is 20, and 30, that's listed, and you'll be able to find more if you kept on listing the multiples. To find the lowest one, you have to choose the lowest number. So out of 10, 20, and 30, which are the common multiples that we just circled, the lowest common multiple of 5 and 10 would be 10. So that means we need to go back to the question and make the denominators become 10. The first fraction of 7 over 10 already has a 10, so we can leave it as it is. However, for the second fraction here, we need to convert this 5 to become 10 by timesing something. So what should we times to the 5 to make it become 10? And the answer is, we need to times 2 to make it become 10. So that is what we will do now. So I need to leave 7 over 10 as it is, but for the second fraction, 2 over 5, I need to make the denominator become 10 by timesing 2. When I times 2 to the denominator, I need to times 2 to the numerator. And so I'm timesing 2 to the numerator and 2 to the denominator to get 10. And now 7 over 10 stays the same, and 2 times 2, 5 times 2, they become 4 over 10. They now have the denominator of 10 and 10, so we are good to subtract. 7 minus 4 for the numerator is 3, and the bottom of 10, the denominator, stays the same, and so the answer is 3 over 10. Let's do some practice questions together. Here we have 5 over 8 minus 1 over 4. The denominators are not the same, and so it means we first need to convert the denominators so that they have the same number. We have a denominator of 8 and 4. So we will first need to make them appear the same by listing its common multiples and finding out what the common multiple between 8 and 4 is. That way we can get the common denominator. Now let's list the multiples of 8 and 4 until we find a common multiple. So I have my 8s. And it goes on. Now my 4s. And so on. I'm stopping here because I can already see the common multiples of 8 and 4, which are, I can see my 8, I can also see 16, and I see a 24. So between 8, 16, and 24, the lowest common multiple is 8. And that means that we need to change this denominator to become 8 because the first fraction already has a denominator of 8. Keeping 5 over 8 as it is, and for my second fraction of 1 over 4, I need to times a number to the 4 so that it becomes 8. And the number that I need to times is 2. And so I have to times 2 to the top and 2 to the bottom and calculate. So first fraction of 5 over 8 stays the same, so just rewrite it and calculate my second fraction. 1 times 2 over 4 times 2, and that becomes 2 over 8. Now that these fractions both have the same denominator of 8, we can subtract. So the denominator stays as 8, and the numerator of 5 take 2 becomes 3. So the answer to the problem is 3 over 8. Next question, we have 4 over 6 minus 2 over 5. 6 and 5 are unlike denominators, so we will go ahead and get the common denominator by thinking about the common multiple between 6 and 5. So you actually have two ways of doing this. If you're looking at 6 and 5 and you can immediately think of a common multiple, that's great and you can just get started. However, if you are looking at 6 and 5 and you feel unsure about the common multiple of 6 and 5, then use the method that we used earlier, which is listing its multiples and finding out the common number. So for those of you who were looking at 6 and 5 and immediately went, oh, I can see that 6 can make 30 and 5 can make 30 by timesing a number, and therefore the common multiple between 6 and 5 is 30. If you thought of that, you can just get started like this. So you would then go write the first fraction, right? 4 over 6, and say I can times 5 to make the bottom denominator become 30. And for the second fraction, 2 over 5, you know that you can times 6 to make the bottom become 30. And that way, you can just simply calculate. 4 times 5, 20. So 20 over 30 for the first fraction. And 2 times 6 is 12. So 12 over 30 for the second fraction. And work it out to get 8 over 30. Now, if you couldn't think of 30 straight away, then you have to use the method of listing the multiples, which I'm going to show you now. The multiples of 6's are and it goes on for the 5's. And it goes on. And as we found out previously, the common multiple of 6 and 5 is 30. So going back to how we did it before, you have to think about what you need to times to the 6 to make it become 30. And you know it's going to be 5 because 6 times 1 is 6, times 2 is 12, 6 times 3 is 18, and 6 times 5 is 30. And for the second fraction, where it has the denominator of 5, you know that timesing 6 to the 5 will give you 30 because 5 times 1 is 5, 5 times 2 is 10, 5 times 3 is 15, and 5 times 6 is 30. So first fraction, 4 over 6, we will times both the numerator and the denominator by 5, and minus second fraction 2 over 5, and we will times both the numerator and the denominator by 6, and calculate. 4 times 5 over 6 times 5, that gives us 20 over 30, minus 6 times 2 and 6 times 5, that gives us 12 over 30. And so the answer is 8 over 30. With a problem where you have 3 fractions, where you notice that the 3 denominators are not the same, you just need to do the same method of finding the common denominator. So with this problem here, we need to find the common number between 2, 5, and 4. And so we will begin by listing their multiples. I have my 2, 5, and 4. And we will keep listing the multiples until there is a common one. I'll start with the biggest number of 5. And stop here. And then I'll list the multiples of 4. I can see a 20 already, so I'm going to stop. And I know that 2 can make a 20, but I'll list them. So the common multiple of 2, 5, and 4 is 20. So that means we need to change this 2 so that it becomes a 20. Change this 5 so that it becomes a 20, and the 4. So let's think about what numbers we need to times to the 2, 5, and 4 individually to make all 3 become 20. And to do that, we need to count to get to 20. So 2 times 1 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 3 is 6, and it goes on 10 times until we can get 20. So it means to the bottom of 2, we need to times 10 to make our denominator 10. For the 5, we can see that 5 times 1 is 5, 5 times 2 is 10, and 5 times 4 is 20, so we are going to times 4 to the 5 to make our denominator 20. Lastly, for the 4, we can see 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, and 4 times 5 is 20, so it means we are going to times 5 to the 4 to make the bottom 20. Now that we know how to make our denominators all become 20, we will begin to calculate. So first, let's convert our fractions by timesing these numbers so that the bottoms become all 20. And I will do that by first rewriting my first fraction, which is 10 over 2, timesing both the numerator and the denominator by 10. Then I'm going to write my second fraction, which is 1 over 5, and timesing both the numerator and the denominator by 4. My last fraction is 2 over 4, and we will times both the numerator and the denominator by 5. We know that the bottom will all become 20, so let's calculate the top. 10 times 10 is 100 over 20. 1 times 4 is 4, so 4 over 20. Lastly, 2 times 5 is 10, so 10 over 20. Now that they all share the same bottom of 20, it means we can calculate the numerators. 100 minus 4 minus 10. We'll do 2 at a time. 100 minus 4 is equal to 96. 96 minus 10 is equal to 86. So it equals to 86 over 20. Depending on the question, it might ask you to convert the improper fraction to a mixed number or to simplify to the simplest form. Here, we will just leave it as it is. With a problem like this where we are subtracting the fractions and we can see that they don't have the common denominator and we see that one of them is a mixed number, we need to do 2 things first. First, we have to convert the mixed number into an improper fraction. Then, we will need to find the common denominator. Once we have that, we can calculate the numerators. So step 1, we will convert our mixed number into the improper fraction. And how we do that is, we will keep the denominator as it is, so the bottom will stay as a 4. And we have to times the 4 to the 1 and add the 1. Then we get our numerator. So it's going to equal to 4. The denominator stays the same. 4 times 1 is 4 plus the 1, so the numerator becomes 5. And then our second fraction, 2 over 6. We now have two fractions, one with the denominator of a 4 and the other one with a 6. So we need to find the common denominator by thinking about the lowest common multiple of 4 and 6. So 4 and 6. The multiples of 4s are multiples of 6, we can see that the lowest common multiple between 4 and 6 is equal to 12. So knowing that the lowest common multiple of 4 and 6 is 12, we will now times to the 4 and the 6 to make the denominators become 12. What should we times to the 4 to make the 4 become 12? We can see that 4 times 1 is 12, 4 times 2 is 8, and 4 times 3 is 12. So it means we have to times 3 to the 4. So let's write the first fraction, 5 over 4, and times both by 3 to make the denominator become 12. Then write the second fraction, 2 over 6, and you can see that for the 6, it is times 1 and times 2 to get to 12, so you're going to times 2 to the numerator and the denominator. Then we get 5 times 3, which is 15 over 12, and 2 times 2 is 4 over 12. They now have the same denominator of 12, so we can subtract. And the answer we're going to get is 15 minus 4, so 11 over 12. Here's our last question for today. We have two mixed numbers with the different denominators. So step 1 is to convert these mixed numbers into improper fraction. And step 2, get the common denominator for both of the fractions and calculate. To convert mixed number into an improper fraction, remember to keep the bottom as it is. Then you will need to times and then add to get the numerator. So for the first fraction, 2 and 1/5, we will leave the bottom as it is. So keep it as a 5 and calculate. 2 times 5 is equal to 10, plus the 1 is 11, so the numerator is 11. Take away, for the second fraction, we have the denominator of a 4, so keep it as it is. Then we will have 2 times, so 1 times 4 is equal to 4, and plus the 2, so the numerator is 6. So here are improper fractions. They have different denominators. So we will now think about the multiples of 5 and the multiples of a 4 to get a common multiple between these two numbers. That way we can get the common denominator. So for the 5, let's list the multiples. And here are the multiples for the 4. And so on. We can see that the lowest common multiple between 5 and 4 is equal to 20. So we will convert the 5 and the 4 so that it becomes 20. And to do that, we will get the first fraction of 11 over 5 and times both by 4, because 5 times 4 equals to 20. Then your second fraction, 6 over 4. And to get to 20, we have to times it by 5. From here, we get 11 times 4, which is 44 over 20. Take away 6 times 5 is 30 over 20. They now have the same denominator of 20 and 20, and so we can calculate the numerator. 44 minus 30 equals 14 over 20. I hope you found today's lesson on subtracting fractions with unlike denominators helpful. Like and subscribe for more videos. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.